How Coco Gauff's forehand confused Jessica Pegula in Wuhan Open final. Coco Gauff won another title, the 11th of her career, at the Wuhan Open with a great performance against Jessica Pegula. The 21-year-old tennis player had no major problems, as she won 6-4, 7-5, without losing a single set during the entire tournament. At the end of the tournament, Jessica Pegula had only words of praise for her opponent, with whom she has a great relationship even outside the tennis courts. It looked like the 31-year-old tennis player was surprised by the superiority of Coco Gauff and her variations in play. The well-known Sky Sports commentator Jonathan Overend commented on Coco Gauff's performance, emphasizing her forehand. Jessica Pegula looked a bit confused by Gauff's forehand and struggled to deal with such a rhythm. "I think that line of attack with the forehand today has been the real standout factor," said Overend, as quoted by Tennis Gazette. "It has either been the slice which has kept it so low and spinning away from Pegula, or the higher ball, with so much net clearance and spin as well. Pegula has not known what is coming next." Former tennis player Naomi Brody emphasizes that Coco Gauff really showed that she belongs to the very top of the tennis scene, delighting with her forehand. There are many other aspects of the game in which the American is dominant, which has been noticed not only by Brody and Overend, but also by all tennis fans. Coco Gauff on Jessica Pegula. Coco Gauff pointed out after the end of the tournament that her coach was initially against her performance at the Wuhan Open, but she still decided to embark on this adventure, which eventually brought her a trophy. Gauff did not forget to thank her opponent Jessica, a much more experienced player, having only words of praise and love for her, considering that Pegula was an important mentor and person who helped her in the long run after Gauff came to the tennis scene. The Wuhan Open final was more than a battle of serves and strokes. It was a psychological chess match played with rackets. On one side stood Jessica Pegula, the steady strategist known for precision and patience. On the other, Coco Gauff, the athletic whirlwind whose explosive energy can unravel even the most disciplined opponent. But on that humid evening in Wuhan, it wasn't Gauff's speed or stamina that broke Pegula's rhythm, it was her forehand. The same forehand that analysts had once called inconsistent became her most deceptive weapon. From the very first rally, Pegula looked ready. She had charted Gauff's patterns, studied her tendencies, and prepared for the explosive backhand that has become a WTA highlight reel staple. What she didn't anticipate was the way Gauff would manipulate pace, spin, and placement from the forehand side, turning what once was a vulnerability into a tactical mirage that left Pegula constantly guessing. The calm before the confusion. Pegula began the match in vintage form, deep, measured ground strokes, angled cross courts, and a serve that kept Gauff pinned behind the baseline. The first few games were textbook Pegula, strategic, clean, and unhurried. Gauff's forehand, meanwhile, seemed subdued. She rolled it with heavy topspin, opting for long rallies instead of early aggression. To the untrained eye, it looked as though Gauff was playing it safe. To Pegula, it looked like an invitation to dictate. But in reality, Gauff was setting a trap. She was disguising her rhythm, feeding Pegula balls that were just high enough, just slow enough to lure her into overhitting. The moment Pegula began stepping inside the baseline to punish those looping forehands, Gauff struck, switching the tempo, flattening her shots, and suddenly driving winners down the line. What had seemed passive turned predatory in an instant. The science of the spin. The transformation of Gauff's forehand over the 2025 season had been subtle but significant. Working with her coaching team, she'd refined her grip, shortened her backswing, and learned to disguise her contact point. What once looked like a defensive stroke had evolved into a shape-shifting weapon, able to produce heavy topspin or surprising flat power with minimal telegraphing. Pegula, a master of pattern recognition, relies heavily on reading her opponent's racket face early. But Gauff's improved forehand robbed her of that ability. The same motion could send the ball arcing high and slow or slicing sharply into the corner. By the middle of the second set, Pegula's timing was off by milliseconds, but those milliseconds were enough. She began mistiming her returns, over-anticipating angles that never came, moving left when she should have stayed right. Gauff wasn't just hitting harder, she was making Pegula doubt her own instincts. mind games in motion. In the second set, a pivotal rally at 3-2 encapsulated the match's shift. Pegula, serving at deuce, sent a deep cross-court shot that should have cornered Gauff. But Gauff, sprinting wide, whipped a forehand that curved in midair, its topspin dragging it just inside the sideline. Pegula, expecting the heavier shot to land deeper, was left frozen. She smiled wryly, shaking her head, as if to say, "Okay, that's new." But the pattern repeated. Each time Pegula thought she'd pinned Gauff, the younger player used her forehand not to defend, but to reframe the rally. Sometimes she looped it high to reset. Other times she flattened it early for a sudden strike. The inconsistency, intentional and artful, kept Pegula from finding rhythm. Gauff's forehand had become like a magician's sleight of hand. Pegula was the seasoned audience member who'd seen all the tricks, until Gauff invented a new one mid-performance. Pegula's tactical frustration. By the third set, Pegula's frustration was visible. She began targeting Gauff's forehand relentlessly, trying to extract the errors that once came naturally from that wing. But the errors never came. Instead, Gauff started dictating points from that very side, dragging Pegula wide and then redirecting play behind her with uncanny precision. Pegula, known for her emotional control, began gesturing toward her box, muttering under her breath. It wasn't anger, it was confusion. Her opponent had rewritten the scouting report mid-match. At one point, commentator Pam Shriver remarked, "It's almost like Pegula doesn't trust what she's seeing. Gauff's forehand looks different every point." And that was the secret. The stroke that had once been predictable had become unpredictable by design. Gauff wasn't just playing tennis, she was conducting psychological warfare through spin and disguise. The decisive blow. At 4-2 in the final set, Gauff produced the shot of the match. Pegula had pushed her deep into the backhand corner, expecting a cross-court recovery. But Gauff pivoted and unleashed an inside-out forehand so flat and fast it zipped past Pegula before she could take a step. The crowd gasped. Pegula's shoulders dropped. That single shot symbolized everything that had changed, not just in the match, but in Gauff's game overall. It was a declaration of confidence, a moment of transformation. From there, Gauff closed the match with a series of forehand winners, sealing her victory 4-6, 6-3, 6-2.